It would be very helpful if you first try to solve the problem yourself before watching this video.
Question 64. Which of the following statements about the graph of G is true? Answer choice A says that G has horizontal asymptote at y equal 1. B, horizontal asymptote at y is equal to negative 1. C, G has a vertical asymptote at x equal 1. D, vertical asymptote at x equal negative 1. So basically, we have to find the horizontal and vertical asymptote of the graph of G, right? Remember, horizontal asymptote has to do with infinite limit, right? When x approaches positive, either positive or negative infinity, right? So let's look for horizontal asymptote first. Let's say x approaches either positive or negative infinity. Then what does this expression right here approach? X over x squared minus 1. Okay, that is equal to, well, that actually approaches to 0, right? When we look at the degree of the denominator, that's 2. And degree of the numerator, that's 1. When the degree of denominator is greater than the degree of numerator, it always approaches 0 when x approaches either positive or negative infinity, right? Then what about g? G is cosine of x squared minus 1, right? So when x approaches positive infinity, this expression approaches 0. This means when this expression approaches 0, what about cosine? Cosine approaches to 1, right? Remember, cosine 0 is equal to 1. Does that make sense? So when this expression approaches 0, right? When this expression approaches 0, cosine 0, that approaches to 1, right? I mean, cosine x over x squared minus 1 approaches 1. So horizontal asymptote is y is equal to 1. So the answer is A. Now let's talk about vertical asymptotes. The vertical asymptotes occur when the denominator of a rational expression is equal to 0, right? But here the function g is not a rational function. This is cosine function, cosine of this angle, right? So no matter what angle value comes here, the function g is always between negative 1 and 1, right? Remember, cosine graph looks like this, starting from 1, goes to 0, goes to negative 1, 0, 1, right? The value of cosine is always between negative 1 and 1, right? So, therefore, the g function, which is a cosine function, doesn't have any vertical asymptotes. Okay? So the answer for question 64 is A.